Hello and welcome to our third and final Rugby World Cup warm-up recap podcast. It was a weekend where South Africa trounced New Zealand and Fiji shocked England. But we're going to talk about the Battle of Bayonne 2, the Samoan rainstorm. Joining me this evening are two Irish and Leinster fans. First up, it's the cornerstone in Irish rugby Twitter debates, Cian O'Miller. Welcome back, Cian.
Thanks for having us. I don't think I've ever been described as a cornerstone before. I might have to start going by brick.
maybe next time I'll just introduce you as Brick and see if people join the dots. And joining him is the always knowledgeable Tom Coleman. Welcome back, Tom.
All knowledgeable. That's even more impressive. Thank you for inviting us, Caelan. Delighted to be here. Yeah.
Good to have you on, lad. So as always, as people know, I'll start these with a game in 60. Fortunately, last night there wasn't really 60 seconds of action in it. If we're being honest. So here we go. And breathe. Ireland have kept the winning momentum alive by grounding out a 17-13 win over Samoa in Bayonne. There may have been no black eyes this time around, but it certainly made for a different type of battle of Bayonne. Tries from Jimmy O'Brien, Conor Murray and Rob Herring set Ireland on their way in biblical conditions. However, the weather is always a great leveller, and if not for Samoan inefficiencies, they could have snatched a win in the nail-biting death. Unfortunately, there were further injury blows. Veteran Cian Healy took a bank to the leg and ultimately missed out on a place in the World Cup squad. Robbie Henshaw, Jimmy O'Brien and Jacob Stockdale also picked up knocks, but there's been no further update as we speak. Earlier today, Andy Farrell named his final 33-man squad for France, with Jeremy Luckman and Stuart McCluskey getting in ahead of the aforementioned Cian Healy and Cian Prendergast respectively. We now turn our attention to the World Cup, which is just 12 days away. We cannot wait. So I'll start with yourself, Cian. Not a great weekend for Cians, as the intro may have suggested. But what was your overall thoughts on Saturday's game?
Yeah, we got the 13th overall consecutive win, which is, it's nice to get a record, but it was a scrappy game. There was no two ways about it. Not a vintage display. To be honest, frankly, probably a bit of a smash and grab job for us in the end. Samoa were probably unlucky not to get that last line out. I know their line out is usually about 70%, so the odds were decent for them. But might have been a missed hand in there somewhere. But I think there was a couple of missed hands in other places throughout the course of the match. So you take the rough with the smooth. All in all, we had good possession and territory, but we were giving away way too many turnovers. Gave away 19 turnovers in that match, whereas our average so far this year for Ireland has been 11.6. So that's significantly higher, nearly double. The line out as well malfunctioned very badly in the first half, and that's one of our key platforms. So just wasn't going without that. Players wise, Conor Murray showed his value yet again, scored a vital try just before half time to get Ireland back in the game. He had a good match, 2.5 meters per carry. One of only 4 clean breaks that we had in the game for the side. He scored that try and 100%, 9 out of 9 tackles. So like a pretty all-round performance in tough conditions from him. Was probably the change of hooker really kind of flipped the game on its head for us. Rob Herring came on, steadied the ship. It's great to have him now in the wider squad. A bit of experience, a reliable set of hands and a head on him as well. Injuries, yeah. I mean, obviously this Cian Healy that's the gutting one. Hope the others aren't too bad. I know they've been played down, but these things a week, less than 2 weeks out from the World Cup, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. Stockdale did well enough, but it was really hard for most people to impose themselves in any way in that game. I suppose all in all, what we got out of it was scraped a win. Unfortunately, that injury, maybe a few more knocks, but loads of work-ons and adversity. So does that actually make it the perfect Farrell result? Maybe.
Maybe it does. The leaked footage that I had up on Twitter would scream adversity at you. If you didn't see it, it's a Ted Lasso, Andy Farrell crossover. Ticks everyone's boxes.
You like your Ted Lasso?
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Yeah.
But we won't get into a quote off here now this evening because we've enough to discuss. But last night's game, as Keane painted, was it really wasn't one for the entertainment factor. And there was, of course, the injuries and all that. But a win is a win.
A win is a win. Well, I put my hands up. I was in the Aviva last night at the American football, the college football, so I didn't actually see this game live. So I watched it in the worst possible way, which is through social media and WhatsApp groups, of which Cian is one of them. And it's always a bit torturous, in between the downs. Plenty of downs you get in college football. You look down, you see a score, and it's literal hair pulling. And I wish this bloody game would be over, and not another one down, and oh my God. And you're looking at this going, what the heck is going on in this game? So I got up this morning, nice and sober after my night in Dublin, and I watched the game clean through this morning. When I sort of cast all those texts aside and went, okay, I'll give it a clean look. And personally, I thought it definitely wasn't as bad as all the texts and the WhatsApps and the Twitter and social media. It seemed. Maybe that's because nothing beats watching a game live and the emotional roller coaster you go as a fan. You look at the injuries, every tackle, every ruck, you know what I mean? So you're not living the moment. So you're able to look at the game in a completely different way and sort of cold, hard. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? So maybe in this game, maybe that perspective, maybe it's just a different angle to show. My synopsis of the first half was Samoa did nothing for 35 or 36 minutes. When you look back on that game, and it was only that lucky interception where it came off the guy's face. I know Stockdale's pass was slightly, or not Stockdale's, McCluskey's pass was slightly high risk, but really they did nothing. They got a bit of a lift after that, and had one good scrum just before the end of half time, and obviously got the lead. But apart from Supawanga dropping spirals down on Jimmy O'Brien and getting some joy off on that, because they were definitely staying away. They looked at the England game and went, we ain't kicking to Mark Hansen. And they didn't really go too much onto Stockdale's side either. They were testing Jimmy O'Brien. I thought Jimmy O'Brien, maybe this is the Leinster boy. I said, it doesn't matter what jersey they're wearing. I thought he wasn't really helped by some of his, call them blockers. I'm putting up my little explanation mark there, inverted there, because Ireland are quite good at that, sort of slowing down the chasers to the kick, and they didn't give him a whole lot of protection all night. He got a lot of dirty ball and he had to come through a lot of traffic. And as Caelan said in your opening salvo, it was a dirty night. It was biblical. It reminded me of the night I went up to Ulster when Leinster went up there, and it was just Monsoon. So I think it's hard to appreciate it on the television. But I thought the first half was quite good. I think Cian summed it up right. There was a lot of errors, when we had positions we were maybe forcing a little bit. I think tactically we were quite happy to play slow ball, and I hate using the word uninformed. Uninformed, Conor Murray will get a lot of flack for that. But Ireland purposely were playing a lot of slow rope ball. We weren't presenting it as quick as we should because they probably felt the conditions didn't allow. And we weren't going with big vengeance to sort of clear out rucks really low. So I think the whole premise, whatever, the reason, Ireland were quite happy to play more secure, slow ruck ball, and that suits Conor Murray's down to the ground, but people looking at it will go, Jesus, he's slow. But he's not. That's the whole system there is designed to have secure ball and then put pressure maybe through a kick or a next play to put pressure on the Samoan backfield. But yeah, as Cian outlined then, I think in the second half, maybe that sort of fire was in their bellies, and we should have really put the game out of sight in about 67 minutes. We had a double 2 or 3 chances to get a try there. I think we'd be unhappy with that because Samoa were on their feet at that stage, and we just should. That's probably one area I'd be disappointed that we had chances. Our maul and our rolling maul was in better shape when Herring came on. Chatting to Caelan pre-pod, I don't think it's all Stuart's fault how the line-out malfunctioned. It was just, you look at, I don't know if anyone caught the France game this evening, Marchand's first 3 or 4 throws were all over the shop. Sometimes it's just a systems thing. And for a younger guy, then it's difficult. He's under pressure. Maybe he's thinking he has a chance to get on the plane. It was a difficult set of circumstances where his first few lineouts weren't firing, and Herring's calm head coming on, coupled with James Ryan, who sort of grabbed the sort of pack by the scruff. If you look at them mauls, he was very, very aggressive on trying to get those mauls go forward. It resulted in one try eventually. Beautiful crossfield kick from Crowley, and obviously I think it was the Herring try came off him all as well. But yeah, they were probably the two players that made the biggest impact off the bench. But overall, yeah, very frustrating. But I didn't think it was, looking at cold and analytically, I didn't think it was bad as it seemed live. But I didn't go through the roller coaster of watching it, so it was just a slightly different perspective from me.
You weren't watching behind your hands as some of us were, especially when you see Keane going off early so quickly. You're just thinking, is it going to be the same story again? As it's always the last warm-up game as well, isn't it? Like it's always one in the last game. I know 2019 they got a bit lucky in that game, but it's nearly always the last one. And I don't want to talk too much about the game myself because I have a squad announcement podcast which is already on the channel feed that's already gone up, and I talked about the game. But you touched on Conor Murray, like Ireland, like their 0 to 3 second ruck ball is only 45%. That's only about 2/3 of where it's normally at. Like then it's the nature of protect first and go from there. It was kind of an accuracy game because when you're making so many mistakes, there was an awful lot of knock-ons, passes not going to hand. It is just keep it as simple as you can. I thought Murray was brilliant last night, to be honest. And like there's the element of players didn't know if they were in the squad. We believe they did, but even say for someone like Tom Stewart, he's definitely still going to be thinking, well, Ronan Kelleher might make it or Dan Sheehan might make it. It's always going to be in the back of his mind, and so on and so forth. I actually think, like for instance, halftime came at the right time for Jacob Stockdale because he kind of had a minute to just clear his head and played a much freer game in the second half. And again, I talked in depth about Stockdale in the other pod, so I don't want to harp on about that. But I suppose, Tom, line out is obviously the one that stands out in terms of the negatives, but both sides of the coin, was there positives and negatives that you take, and not just from Ireland, but from Samoa as well, because to their credit, first game against a tier 1 side since the 2019 World Cup, and they ran them close.
Yeah, I think Samoa had won the last 8 games, or maybe one loss in 9 or something really good. So, and yeah, no, look, Samoa will be delighted. They'll feel maybe when their two locks made a break towards the end of the second half and made sort of 60 meters, and they got us under a bit of pressure in the sort of the last 5 minutes, they'll feel then that they had a chance to win the game. I don't think they put enough pressure on Ireland throughout the second half before that to say they could have won the game. Like the last score they got was in 45 minutes. I think that penalty after half time when they started okay at the start of the second half, but they really didn't put pressure on our line. So they had a chance near the end. Mainly, I think, because we didn't put them away, as I outlined earlier on about the chances we had. But look, it was Spuanga's first game. He's a huge player for them going forward. He just gives them that experience and depth, and him playing more with the team. And they have a class central partnership as well. We all seen Sutiani for La Rochelle. He's probably the most underrated player, or most unknown underrated player in Europe for anyone that doesn't watch rugby that often. So they have the ingredients to go really well, and the more they can play, and they've got a group in the World Cup that they can maybe get a little bit of momentum and could cause a surprise. I think they're a more rounded team than Fiji, even though Fiji probably was a result of the weekend, but they've probably got a little bit more depth about them than Fiji's. Fiji has some sort of glaring weaknesses that Samoa doesn't have. So yeah, it's been a good outing for Samoa, and for a team that doesn't play as often. As you say, I think they've only played 10 games together since the last World Cup, which is a real problem for. That's the amount total of the games that they've played.
That's on World Rugby. That's their fault.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So like, how the hell, like if Ireland only played 10 games between now and last 2019, how good or bad would it be? So in the context of that, it's fantastic for Samoa. Yeah, look, when I was looking back through the game and I was sort of making mini notes every 15 minutes, the one repeating thing was line out. And it was actually for both teams. Samoa's line out was all over the shop as well. I know Cian mentioned that they usually have a higher percentage, but there was a huge amount of poor line outs. And I very rarely on any pod mentioned the referee. I didn't think Wayne had his best game, but that's mainly because of the conditions. I thought silly things he was sort of letting go. Cian did touch on, sort of the hands in the line out, where both sides were interfering with the jumper catching the ball. And, that evened itself out as well. I thought one area that was interesting where maybe Ireland will have to keep an eye out for is that assist tackler, where the initial tackler makes a tackle, and then if you're part of that tackle, you're meant to be hands off as well. Now, if you just sort of gently help the player down that's been tackled and then go in to try and steal the ball, I think that's fine. It's a fine line, but Samoa's assist tackle constantly was in over the ball, and it didn't help our speed of ruck. And more luck to them if they got away with it. But I think it's fair to say we need probably a fussier ref at the breakdown, and Wayne Barnes just and look, Wayne Barnes is a great referee. Absolutely not going to sit here and criticize him. It's just a style that doesn't suit our weakness in our game when it's there. So that's a constant with Wayne. It's not a criticism. It's just an observation, and we're the one that has to adapt, not him. If he refs the breakdown that way, that's on us. So it's not a thing. But we are a little bit vulnerable when teams are allowed to throw the ball down at the ruck. In my interpretation of it legally, especially with assist tackler, and he's just not pinging them. But yeah, no, I thought just overall it was more a play safe sort of feeling game than, and that was highlighted, I think, mainly as I described around our ruck play. Just it was safety first after so many mistakes. But the line out is a continuing worry. I think that's the main area, given the injury profile of our hookers and how the line out has gone in the 3 games warm up. I think, and so much of, I know everyone says it, but it's true. So much of Ireland's sort of front forward ball comes from lineouts and stuff like that. You look at Dan Sheehan, even in the first 20 minutes of the Heineken Cup for Leinster, similar type of thing. Once that's stopped, it's a different kettle of fish. So yeah, that's the big work on for Paulie with the lads over the next 11 days, 12 days before our first game against Romania.
And one of the luxuries that I've touched upon, and I didn't just say it on this podcast, but also in articles, is Ireland are probably in a situation, Keane, where this is their third of maybe four and a half kind of warm-up games. Like the Romania game is not going to be a test, or if it is, we're all going to have Namibia 2007 flashbacks, and no one needs them. But
Jesus,
like
no.
we're in that situation where you can't read too much into it as well, because like knock-ons happen on a night like last night.
Yeah.
You're going to have issues when you have a new hooker in who, as I said to Tom, he definitely throws the ball a little bit differently, that just didn't seem to sync up, compared to maybe Herring, who's a softer throw. And just these little things, it all adds up. Like I suppose I'm not going to say, well, like, what is your thoughts on it all being negative, because it's not, or all positive. But if you were to highlight something, as Tom did, line out, things like that, scrum, there is a bit of an asterisk there, isn't there?
Yeah, of course there is. I mean, you can summarize a lot of it in looking at how many starters there were in that side. It was very much a kind of a stretching the squad selection. Looking at the first 2 games from our group, really, I would have thought. So that there were issues there you could basically call cohesion issues, that kind of ran throughout, compounded by the weather and compounded by then a team that got their dander up. I mean, the wet conditions meant that both teams kind of resorted to more kicking. It's about 50% more kicking than either team would do on average. So where Ireland do kick quite a bit, we were kicking more and we were kicking differently. We weren't able to get those chases in and set up a strong line and a counter or anything like it. And the rain meant that you weren't going to be guaranteed on taking the possession on a kick return either. So it was a bit hairy. They targeted our line out pretty effectively. Our line out's normally 87.1% is the average of the last year, and we were 76% in that game. So yeah, there was, you can't blame it all on the throw. Absolutely not. It did look systemic, again compounded by the weather. Did we have the issue with the blocking off I think we had one.
I think there was one.
Yeah, which is an improvement,
definitely
I suppose.
But I think there was set up issues as well, though, even before that. Like that we had one Pretty sure we'd one knock on just getting the ball to the base of the mall as well.
Yeah, but I mean, Samoa's line out is normally 70%. It was 64 in this. So you know, it kind of it tells a tale of the weather interfering with both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, we struggled with their physicality a little bit, I thought. You know, there weren't many line breaks in this game, given again the way I hate to keep coming back to weather, but really does kind of come down on everything that happened within the game. Their lock McFarland actually in the carry and in the line out was a demon. Like he's one to watch, I think, the World Cup. He's going to go well for them. He
was with Saris when he was younger.
He's 27 though, which I couldn't get over. When I was doing my preview, I thought he was young because you know, you hear about young prodigy at Saracens, but he's 27 years of age. You know?
35 is young to me, so 27 is young too. Yeah, he beat 4 defenders, as well as working the line out last night. So pretty good. And their blindside Sau beat 4 defenders as well. And their fullback Iowa, I'm gonna have a stab at that. He beat 2 defenders. So, you know, they were running it back and they were having a go and using their physicality, but it was a night that was going to make that kind of running game difficult even when it did happen. Our kicking game was a positive. Murray was putting them pretty much in exactly where they needed to be. When he put boot to ball, a couple of nice crossfield kicks as well, and kicks in behind the line. The kicking was pretty good, especially again given the weather. Like the kicking.
A lot of good clearance kicks, I thought, especially in a side without James Lowe. Like typically we'd go to Hansen, but he doesn't have the same distance. But I thought Jack Crowley really stepped up to the mark, kicking long as well.
Yeah.
I looked the game back. I thought the first 2 kicks were a bit off, but I wouldn't mind that because you're trying to judge the wind and the rain. But after that, he you know, most of the times he made the right decision on whether to kick long or try to grubber it through or try to head for the sideline. So yeah, overall managing that game. And it was interesting he switched to fullback with Ross Byrne came on. I think that's something they're possibly looking at for some of the games, maybe in the group, just to see how that goes and give Crowley that sort of chance of hitting the line at 12 as a different, you know, or the outside channels, which he's well able to do. So just a different dynamic maybe he's looking at for some of the other groups or other group games, which would be interesting enough. I thought one constant again, and it should go without saying, you know, what we're talking about, the positives we're saying about Samoa are all true, but I thought Ireland's defence throughout the game was still outstanding. You know, really, if you look at it, we didn't really give Samoa much chances. That's, you know, their try came off a mistake. They had a bit of pressure off a scrum and took a penalty just before half time to take the lead. They had a good 5 or 6 minutes and probably been a bit harsh here at the start of the second half. Really, they didn't really get close to trapping our line. I thought our defence, scramble defence, was all very good and we found out well. But again, maybe Samoa, just if they're 9 and 10, play together a bit more and get them combinations going, because they have 2 good quality centres. That'll improve with them as well. I thought they weren't good at making some decisions when they had, and against Ireland, you have to be really good to break our defence. So, you know, you're asking for a positive. Our defence, I think, was outstanding. Samoa, I know the last 5 minutes is always the 5 minutes that's in everybody's mind when they come away from the game and you think, oh, line out 5 meters out, and oh, Jesus, here we go again, Bayonne, take 2. But really, it was sporadic, the amount of time they put pressure on us in the red zone, and we looked comfortable for a lot of it.
Yet actually, their defenders beaten and clean breaks was just about the same as their average over the last year. So kind of our defense was good and it was stable, but they're not actually that much more of a running threat than was shown. I think actually probably the biggest thing that went in their favor was their discipline yesterday.
Yeah, only 6 penalties conceded.
6 penalties. They averaged 12 over the last year per game.
That's huge.
6 in that kind of weather is a massive fill-up.
And you know who won't be liking that? England, a team who has to go 3-6-9 to beat you.
Yeah,
you know,
very much.
And we're not. I'm going to talk about England and Samoa in a minute. So I don't want to start sharpening the knives yet, but just because Tom mentioned the tackle stats, Ireland missed 18 tackles yesterday, but the most that anyone missed was Robbie Henshaw and Ross Byrne with 4, and I think you can kind of chalk them off too. Henshaw just wasn't really on it yesterday, and
I also think, not jumping in there ahead of you, Caelan, I also think if you look at the stats back even for the last 2 years, Gary Ringrose, who plays that 13 channel, the missed tackle stat is always a weird one there, because a lot of times he's rushing out to force them back inside, and they take it as a missed tackle. So don't get me wrong, I didn't think Henshaw had his best game, but I think the 13 channel, the way we defend, the way we play, is a lot about forcing teams back inside, and
smothering them,
it's
and
not necessarily about making that massive hit.
Yeah.
And in fairness, Fiku plays the same way. His missed tackle stats looks poor, but like no one's going to say he's a poor defender, So it's a bit of an odd one. That's one of those. Look, the fullback ran for 300 meters. Well done.
I was going to go that way anyway. Just the fact that like you can chalk these things down to style as well. Like an out half missing 4 tackles. It's like, yeah, but one of Ross Burns' missed tackles came because himself and Henshaw literally ran into each other.
Yeah.
These are the things that you can't equate for. And I kind of have to say that because a couple of Leinster people aren't happy in my recent podcast. But moving on, it's not you. I like, usually we'd be talking about talking points. There wasn't too many. So I kind of start with yourself, Tom. Like we talked about it. You can't really read too much into it, but was there anything from that game, and I assume you're maybe line out or set piece, that you'd be looking at just sharpen that up for Romania and Tonga, and then
Yeah, I think Ireland just it's all about tempo to our game. That's how we've won so many games in a row, and I think the plan last night was to take the tempo out of that, I described earlier on, and I think that shows also trying to be positive that you can still win games when you're under pressure and you have a different set of circumstances. So I think that can't be discounted either against a fairly decent Samoan team that we're looking to take a massive scalp. Because let's face it, sometimes we're afraid to put ourselves down as a massive scalp, but we are. That's just the bottom line. It's hard to get used to saying it, but we are. And it would have been a huge fill-up for and they will take huge positives. I guarantee you there's nothing negative about it's on Samoan podcast or media tomorrow about how they performed against Ireland and Bayonne. They'll be delighted the way they went and the pressure they put Ireland on in different areas of the field. So look, I think Ireland players, and maybe this is something that's a slight downfall, and it's been mentioned by others, that we're such a systems orientated team, but with a lot of freedom within them systems. It's not like the Joe Smith systems that's a little bit restricted. And sometimes for having new guys come in and try and come to grasp with that, and when you have a lot of new guys in at the same time, like we did last night, that we're playing to each other for I'm not saying for the first time, it can be difficult. That cohesion, the word Keane used earlier on, is just not as there as much. So it's good to have this game because some of these guys might be playing against Romania and against Tonga. So yeah, just that's it. We might look back in 3 or 4 weeks' time and realize the value of this game to give these guys a run out.
Yeah.
And so that's I think the other positive is that Farrell, and the buzzword is adversity. He set it up as a Rugby World Cup week. The move in the hotels, like they were getting up the next day, they were doing everything like they will in the World Cup. This is like a dry run for the whole, not just what happens on the pitch, but the preparation and then moving cities and all that sort of stuff. So, there's a lot more that goes into preparing a team than just turning up on the day. And I think all those things would have tested and taken out any weaknesses both on and off the field. So yeah, look, as Keane opened up with it, it's 30 wins. It's not to be sniffed at. Not to be sniffed at.
We could have a Rayburn Shield being won very soon, but I'm not going to go into explaining that because it's a long one. But I suppose, Keane, we have to talk about the major moment of the game, which is, of course, the untimely and cruel injury to Cian Healy. I mentioned, and I'll give both of you a chance to speak on Cian. I mentioned it on the squad announcement podcast that he's a legend. He's one of our best ever, and couldn't speak higher of him as a player and as a man. And I suppose I just want to give you the chance to talk about Cian, because this, we don't like to retire players. He could be back in the Six Nations, but there's a chance that this is his last game in green, and he could be missing out on the World Cup. And it's a cruel twist of fate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely gutting this one. I mean, watching it happen, it was that scrum folded and then they drove kind of diagonally and
Yeah.
over him. It was horrible looking. You knew immediately he was in trouble from that. And then like he's not a player who'll stay on the ground. He's definitely a player who'll walk off if he can. So to see him being carried off, two lads on either side of him, it's just you knew it was bad. I mean, he's a player that's had a very special place in my heart. Kind of see him coming up through Leinster, but then that World Cup in us, and that game against Australia, that was kind of one of my standout World Cup moments. Was he just had such a fantastic game, and ever since then, I've had such a graw for him as a player. And even now, he's got better flexibility than perhaps 10 years he's junior. He can scrummage anywhere across the front row at international level. You'd be mad to think a player of that caliber won't be missed. Yes, he's not as quick as he used to be, but he was never a speed merchant by any stretch, even amongst the props. But his flexibility and his nous in the scrum is just amazing, and it'll definitely be missed. Loss of a front row player at all is amongst one of the last things you want happening just before a World Cup. He'd probably have started at least one of the first two tests, and the old head there would have been very handy, especially against Tonga in that second test, and off the bench in later tests. So it's a hole in the squad. There's no denying it. That we were always going to get something that was going to come along out of the warm ups. It always does. And you look at the position that some of the other teams have been put in now. We've probably not been hit too badly, but I mean, it is what it is at this stage. It's it is what it is, and Lockman now gets an amazing opportunity to show what he can do on a big stage, having only gotten his debut in November.
And one of the big advantages, Tom, is like we're calling up a player who took on France Malherbe, one of the best tight head props in the world, twice at the end of last season, and had absolutely no problems. Granted, Munster didn't have a great day scrummaging against the Stormers either day, but he had no problems with Malherbe. It wasn't on his side that the issues were. It's testament to the depth. But in terms of Cian Healy, like at the start of the year, we were celebrating him winning the scrum penalty at hooker. Like that's if he ever writes a book, like we're all going to be reading that page in particular.
Yeah, we'll just finish now where you left off on Lockman. If he has to come on with 20 minutes to go against South Africa in that pool game, exactly what you said will stand to him hugely. Like that, he's been in the cauldron of Cape Town against Malherbe and came out the other end. So like that will stand to him, and he'll only get better. Yeah, look, like Cian said about Cian Healy, he is the 24th man as well, because not many teams have the ability to swap him into hooker when you could lose another man given the laws. And like we did against Scotland, like would our Grand Slam have gone a bit skew-ways? I know Scotland were a bit all over the shop that day too. But it is a little thing that doesn't happen that often in international rugby, but where you need that somebody else to slot in at hooker. But we've sort of lost that ability now, because none of the rest of the front row can do that. As Cian mentioned, those other pool games we would have against Romania or maybe Samoa, definitely, where it's going to be quite physical, he'll be missed. And like, what is he, 135, 136 caps or something?
Something around that. I know.
I mean, you can't. It's hard to replace. It's hard to replace that. You can look across at a guy when you're at a meeting and that's been there in those tough matches in pools and World Cup before. So it, I said elsewhere, I look at it two ways. Absolutely gutted for Cian Healy on a personal basis, but rugby is rugby. We went into the France game without Henshaw, Furlong, and Gibson Park. You would think our three starters possibly, and Aki was missing the first game, and McCluskey played the first three games, and Furlong was missing a couple of games, and then we did other injuries. Killendoris that's just unfortunately rugby. It's very hard to get through, whether it be a Heineken Cup or a league season or Six Nations, without losing players at key time. And we just have to get on with it. Do you know what I mean? It looks like the World Cup is going to be looking at some of the games the weekend, the aggressiveness of the Samoans, Fiji and England, and especially that South Africa game that's in our pool when they've played against the All Blacks. It looks like it's going to be a hugely attritional pool for both. So, it won't be the last, unfortunately, we see. And as you mentioned earlier on, Caelan, guys that are just thereabouts, whether it be Prendergast or whoever else, they want to keep doing the press ups and keep doing the splits, because there's a fair chance they'll get called up throughout the month of September, October. But yeah, good for Cian. He's been unlucky a couple of times. He didn't go on any lines tour 3 times. I think was injury. He got in the plane once and got his ankle done out in Australia.
Yeah,
just been hugely unlucky at times. I know the lines can be a bit marmite for some people, but look, the players absolutely hold it in high prestige, and he was very unfortunate several times, and now he is missing a World Cup. So he's been fairly robust throughout his career. I think it's the old yoga we have to take up, Cian, when we're getting a bit older, that he does. I've yet to start, but I think
already have.
he's a yoga man anyway. From what I believe, and he's definitely a good advert for taking up yoga if he can be that supple and play across an international front row like that. But personally, it's for him. It's good. But the good thing is, he's staying on at Leinster for another year. He seems determined to keep going with the careers, and as I think Leinster will benefit him next year again, given the performances he can, at a fairly decent level still across the front row. So, hopefully he'll finish his club career differently than what it seems like at the moment, his international career.
And he might get a chance to get back into the squad. We should recognise that. And then if there's any man who's come back from injuries, it is Cian Healy. He's done it time and time again. And I did want to get into the squad, but I felt like we'd be doing Samoa a disservice if we didn't talk about them in some degree, just simply because, as we outlined at the start, for them to not be playing tier 1 teams and to run Ireland that close. They mentioned Silela Mapasua said they were inspired by Fiji, and it kind of looked like it as well. Like they were up for this in a non-faux Ben Earl type way. Like they were physically there, everything was just kind of working for them. Tom, you mentioned Sapoanga's kicking was unbelievable. Like it really was. Like some of those spirals were on the money from Sapoanga, and like we talked about an awful lot about England on this podcast last week. Probably a bit too much considering their style of rugby is the furthest thing from exciting. But watching that game, you can't help but feel like if Samoa are clued in for that game, they could take England. Argentina might be different because Argentina, they actually play some rugby, but England generally don't. And if you get into a kick fight with Samoa, the only worry I'd have is their set piece is poor, as Cian outlined with the stats. Definitely a lot worse than England, especially at line-out time. But Fiji have the same problems, and they just did it. And I think this is a great chance for them. Like, no one was talking about Samoa before today, or before yesterday, and now a lot of people have stood up and took notice. And we obviously hope to see them do well because we know about the underfunding and all that. But if they were to put in a shock against England, and even just, they have to beat Japan, first of all, to try and get 3rd place and get re-qualified. That's obviously a huge game. I think it could be the last day of World Cup pool action. Like, I'd be excited if I was following Samoa. I wouldn't be, I'm not going to put the house on them to get out to the quarterfinals or anything, but it's exciting to see. And it might not last. It might have been just right day. Everything just kind of worked for them. But you look at the stat pack, they didn't play an awful lot of rugby. They didn't have to play an awful lot of rugby. They were smart. And they're going up against a team like England who try to play very little rugby and are still getting outsmarted. And they could do it. Again, not going to say it's definitely going to happen. A lot of rugby is to be played yet, but it could. And I suppose, like, we'd all celebrate it. Like, there's no point hiding from it because we love Samoa. But it's what makes this World Cup great. It's why we're all at the edge of our seats, because we know that feasibly 3 teams can get out of every pool at the very, maybe not Italy. I understand that, but you never know. and it's an incredible situation to be in heading into this World Cup. And I suppose I was going to ask you at the end, but does results like these, and I'll come to you first, Keane, does it kind of change how we view this World Cup, these warm-up games so far?
Do you know what I mean? Like, I try not to put too much credence into the very last games before World Cup, because teams are trying a lot of stuff, and there's mixed selections, and there's a number of factors, which means that the results aren't always to form. But it's really hard not to get excited by some of these results, because they're so far, like, even if you bring everything else in, it's so outside of the form book that you would have expected for. And it's like, you really can't now discount some of these quote unquote, tier 2 or unfavored teams pulling a shock. Like, you have shock results in every World Cup anyway, but and you do have surprise quarterfinal qualifiers as well. But honestly, this feels like, I mean, Group C and D, they are ripe for probably 1, 2, 3 surprise quarterfinalists. It's going to be absolute chaos. I'm almost glad at this stage that we're in the quote unquote group of death, because we kind of know approximately how it's going to. Though that's going to be absolutely nuts in Group C and D. You're going to be getting the calculator out and the spreadsheet and trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Samoa, they could beat England and Japan. England are. Look, I mean, there's a qualifier on it. England are playing like a team that are training really hard right up to the match. So, they look ragged on the day, but they'll be fitter for the World Cup on the back of it. But they're not showing much shape, and I don't know if fitness will be enough to get them through. Samoa could run them, and Japan's form since the last World Cup has been frankly dire.
Yeah.
Like, I can actually see them getting in a real bit of trouble. Maybe a win over Chile, maybe not.
That could be the one. Yeah, I agree.
Argentina, patchy, but probably the best form out of the group,
which is saying something.
Yeah,
they have one win. Sorry, I know they bet Spain, but like, they had one win in the Rugby Championship, and that was a last-minute try.
Yeah.
But they've obviously beaten lads within 12 months, beat New Zealand, beat Australia. The runs that the game at South Africa only won 2 points, was it?
Yeah, but to be fair, they scored like 2 late tries in the last 5 minutes in kind of garbage time.
Yeah, I think Samoa, just finished following on, I think Samoa do have a great chance. And the interesting thing with Samoa, I actually thought Fiji would struggle to get against England, because I looked at the Fiji-France game, and it sort of was a France A team, for want, I hate using the term, but it sort of was. And the area where Fiji struggled in, inverted commas, the area where England are strong, as in sort of set piece. And I thought they might squeeze Fiji, but that shows you how bad England are at the moment, that they couldn't even get that. I think Samoa, I've mentioned earlier on, are a bit more rounded team than Fiji. I know Fiji won against them in that Pacific Championship, but I think they've got options. Like, Alatoa was on the bench last night; he's going to start, and then they have that option of excuse my pronunciation, Christian Lelefano, the ex-Australian. He could play number 12 and give them that second kicking option to let them play, because they are a good kicking team, as Cian mentioned earlier on, and can put pressure on you. I think man Jordan Tafoa, who came on, he should come into the row as well, and that will allow Fritz Lee playing his normal position, and he's an outstanding 8 with Clermont. Fritz Lee, like, he's really abrasive. So Clermont could get, or not Clermont, Samoa can get better. With bit more, we spoke about cohesion from Ireland, but I think it's fair to say Samoa are suffering from lack of cohesion as well. Yeah, you're right. Argentina probably at the best form, and Samoa probably next. And yeah, quarterfinals out of there. If it's Argentina, Samoa, Australia, and Fiji, that would be quite something else. Like, yeah, and it'd be great to see. It'd be great to see if something like that happens. But it's hard to know. A lot of I did think Ireland's fitness. I know the last 5 minutes, I think Ireland's slightly better conditioned than it did tell in the second half, and that's only true just the systems we have here with the RFU that the Pacific Islanders teams don't have.
Yeah.
And it's probably an unfair advantage,
but also look at the bench options we were bringing on as well.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's, it was a stretched selection style 15, and then we were bringing our first team off of the bench, and it just about made a difference, but it was going to make a difference, all right.
Even in the area of line out, if you're able to bring Herring, O'Mahony, and Ryan on, like that's
instant line out.
You could
just
be
on water.
you could be the All Blacks, and you could bring, even though the All Blacks play, you could be South Africa, and you could bring on Ryan and Papir O'Mahony at 5 and 6, and that would improve your line out. They're good exponents of it, so it as you said, made a big difference for them when they come on.
And it definitely made a difference, and depth is a huge part of it all. But and I will come back to you about in depth in a minute, but there was probably one more talking point from the Ireland squad today, and that is the decision to go 18-15. And yes, we are going moving on to the squad now, if you haven't guessed. And the 18-15 split means that Cian Prendergast is probably the big name absentee on the forward side of things. And it looks like Stuart McCluskey got the nod ahead of him. Cian, I'll come to you again. I know I'm asking you all the Cian related questions, but between this call with Prendergast and between going 18-15 and that breakdown side of things, what do you make of it? Do you think it's you're probably not going to come on here and say Andy Farrell's got it wrong, but what way would you have gone per se if it was in your hands?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a pretty tell it like it is, shock jock kind of guy. And I do feel like I'm being typecast, being on talk about all of the Cians. Thank you very much, Kaelan. Yeah, really appreciate that. No, Prendergast, he's unlucky, isn't he? I mean, he probably is a victim of the decision to go with the 18-15 split. It probably is the right call. But Prendergast, I mean, he really did everything he could. He didn't do anything wrong at all. It's not down to him. He put in great shifts every opportunity that was given to him. I think with the way the rest of the selection fell, you've got Cohn covering 8, Van der Flyer covering 7, Doris anywhere across the back row, Peter O'Mahony as well at a push. I know 6 or 7 is the preference, but he can absolutely do a job at 8 as well. And then you've got Byrne and Baird as half locks. You've actually got a fair bit of cover there in the back row. I know it's a very attritional kind of group, but even so, we probably have enough to get through the pool stages in any case. But he's very much next to the line. If there's an injury outside of Byrne or Baird, I wouldn't be surprised for him to be called up whatsoever. And then McCluskey getting the call, I think they needed that 13. I think because of the lack of 13 specific specialist 13 cover, you got either Henshaw or Aki moving across, preferably, no offense to Aki, but preferably Henshaw. Aki's a little rusty in the 13 channel. So I think they needed the specialist 12 to plug the possible gap there. McCluskey going meant no Frawley. I think he had too much to do after the injury or at the very beginning of the season, meaning he missed out on the SA tour. All in all, to be honest, I like the selection. I think it's very solid. I think it's nicely balanced. There's no huge shocks. There's no huge gambles. I'm not a gambling man. I like to hedge my bets, and that's the selection it is. I was delighted to see Earls getting the nod. It's great to see him because he is the kind of player that Farrell loves. He's a real glue player.
Yeah.
Like even for games he's not selected, he's going to be a glue. He's going to be there for the squad. Like, he's going to make a difference even if he's not on the pitch. And well, Stockdale coming back into form, I think his run was too late, and a little bit shaky at times. He seemed to enjoy himself well enough yesterday, apparently with the pressure off him, knowing that he hadn't been selected. So there's potential for him down the road. But yeah, all in all, I like the squad. I like the selection. I probably would have gone very much the same. I don't know if I would have really gone any different other than Healy being in if he'd been fit.
That's fair. And Tom, I suppose the other major talk point is depth. It always is with Ireland. We have hopefully, touch wood here, we've moved on from, oh, we need 75 starting out halves ready to go in the country. I hope we've moved on from that stage of the discourse. But the word in the street, the word from camp is that most of the 33 will feature in their first two games. So in that line of things with depth, who would you like to see not just playing, but hopefully stake a claim that they could maybe bolt into the squad for the final two pool games against South Africa and Scotland?
Yeah, if everybody's fit, there's not that many places up for grabs in those two games. You're talking, not going to name them here, but 21 or 22 possibly of those, at least 21 of those players are, barring injury, are nailed on who's going to be involved in those games. I think we'll continue to see maybe Ross Byrne and Crowley flick between 10 for the first two games. I think it all depends on how Sexton goes, really. That's the unknown in this. We're all presuming now he's fully fit, and that's all good. But I think Farrell will continue to, maybe against Samoa, he might start Crowley and bring on Byrne and drop him to 15, just to give those options that if Crowley had to drop to 15. That's probably the one. I think it wouldn't be unfair to say maybe Crowley's pushed himself to head to number 2 at the moment over the course of these 3 games. I think that's okay to say. And then depth-wise, I think if Ross Byrne's your number 3, I think we should be happy with that. That's a hell of a place to be in. I know his kicking's gone a bit askew in the last couple of games that he's played, but that's just an anomaly. If anyone's been looking at him at all for the last 10 years, he's metronomic with his bloody kicking. So I wouldn't be concerned about that at all. And then just around the park, it'll be players I think will grow into it. I think it's a great chance for Kilcoyne and Lockman obviously to try and stake a place now. I think it's sort of Lockman's sort of took the lead there the tail end of Munster season. I know Kilcoyne had injuries, but Lockman did nothing wrong. So he's sort of the man in possession, to for want of a better word. It's all good. Keane pointed out the depth we have and how much we can rotate the second row and the back row. So maybe that's the thinking on the split rather than bringing Prendergast. I think, look, anyone that's been following it for a while realised it was probably down to whether it be 18-15 or 19-14, and it's interesting. France and South Africa have gone for the opposite. I trust Farrell and the coaching team, but in a hugely attritional group, which it will be, Samoa is going to be very physical. Like anyone that's watched Samoa, or not Samoa, Tonga is going to be hugely physical. Romania, unfortunately, are just in a very bad place, so sort of write that game off. But like the Scottish and the South African and the Tongan game were hugely physical. Possibly then I'd like to have seen another forward, because but that's really been picky. I think both Earls and McCluskey, people sort of had Keith on the plane already, and which is fair enough. I get the side of it, but McCluskey really should have been on the plane too. He was key in the Grand Slam. First 3 games, never put a foot wrong. Really played really well. So Farrell is he's a lot of stock in the account there from Farrell. I did feel it would just come down to what way the split would be, and Prendergast is slightly unlucky to. But look, he's only an hour and a half flight away. And it won't be like Tom Court flying in from the beach in Australia, whenever that was, or the glory days of getting Michael Bent to turn up and play against the Maori, just call him down from the local pub. It won't be that, but look, a few lads should be ready by the phone and keeping fit and stuff, because given that group that we're in, and we all seen how physical South Africa was, that game is going to be absolutely brutal. I think both teams should bear in mind they've got knockout stages after that before they tear lumps off each other in the pool stages, and they've got France or New Zealand possibly waiting. It's going to be attritional. So maybe I might have edged personally with one forward, but I trust the lads in the camp at this stage to make the decision on the basis. I think it gives, given the quality, use the term footballer, we've got a lot of good footballers in that, from 4 to 8 guys that can just slot and play at a lot of positions. And I think it's testament to the quality of the likes of Tyke Bourne or Caelan Doris or Peter or Josh, who can just play in numerous positions fairly comfortably. I think that's why we've gone with the split. We've just our lads aren't as pigeonholed into positions as other teams are.
Yeah, no, that's true. The versatility factor gets brought up the whole time. but there is absolutely an element of these lads are versatile already. Do you know, like it's with the exception of probably McCluskey, Furlong, Tom O'Toole. I know that the hookers generally just play hooker, but those lads, James Ryan, how many more players don't cover a second position?
Yeah.
Do you know? Like even like from a systematic point of view, Jameson Gibson Park defends in the wing, Conor Murray defends in midfield. Do you know? Like that's what we're talking about here. Like but because well, I'll be speaking to you during the World Cup, hopefully, lads. But because it is getting ever closer and going to be really moving into the Ireland side of predictions. I know this week is different, but next week in particular. So I just want to get your thoughts on where Ireland stand and where everyone else stands as well. Because like I'm of the belief that if Ireland don't win the World Cup, it won't be because of themselves this time. I genuinely believe that. I think they could just be beaten by a better team. And Tom, coming to you first, like as of today, where do you rate Ireland's chances and how do you see the tournament unfolding?
If I was a betting man, I think we're just sitting tight in third spot. I think France been at home. There's a hair between Ireland and France. Talk about two teams. We're pissed off playing Clermont. I guarantee if France are pissed off playing Ireland and vice versa. There's not much difference between those two teams. I think it's worth looking back in the Six Nations game, how much under pressure. I know that we only scored with Ringrose in the 72nd minute, I think. But we had France under all sorts of pressures in that game. They won't like playing us. I think, but I think given the history and the group we're in, I think it's fair enough to say France and South Africa are probably 1 and 2. I find it hard to believe this, but if we have in a quarter final, I'm not ruling out the Scots, but if we have a quarter final, 9 times out of 10 would prefer to be playing New Zealand than France. And that's a bit of a weird thing to be saying when you're looking at rugby union since you've been born. But I'd love to have a crack at New Zealand in the quarter final. We let ourselves down, 4 years ago. So I do agree with you, Kel. I don't think, we won't beat ourselves. I think it'll be just maybe a better team of the day. But I do think there's not much between them 3 teams and New Zealand, in fairness. One bad result isn't, one poor, desperate result isn't going to write them off. They'll be back and they've got time to build into the tournament. They will get out of that group, as much as we think Italy might cause some sort of an upset, but they'll definitely get out. So once they get the French game out of the way, they've got a clear run to a quarterfinal. They'll be fresh and they're well able to ambush anybody in that quarterfinal, whether it be us or South Africa. They'll have no fear of either. But yeah, I think we're in a good place. I think the depth is there. Back to the days when Paulie got injured and Sean O'Brien, and we were struggling for players and positions back in whenever it was
2015.
The depth is there. So look, I think we're in a good place. And I think they realize what the task is hand, and I think they've been building up to this. Once the groups was known from a few years ago, they've known what test lies ahead, and Ireland will play a lot of smart rugby. People might be a bit frustrated, I imagine, during the polls, just to beat Scotland. It's all about the results. It doesn't matter shite about how we win those games.
Yep.
We'll box clever against Scotland and grind them out, maybe. You know what I mean? It won't be all, let's beat them by 10, 15 points and put on all the skills, but it's all about getting the result in those games. And I suppose we'll be looking at the quarterfinal, hopefully, after, with interest when we see the result of the France-New Zealand game, because I said I'd rather play New Zealand than I would France, even though there's not much between the two teams. But yeah, look, it's exciting. It's a pig of a draw, but you know what? All these years, especially the last, say, 3 World Cups, we've had expectations, and we've sort of went out before we thought we should. Like, nobody's thinking past the quarterfinal. Maybe even nobody's thinking past the pool, but definitely nobody's thinking past the quarterfinal if your options are France and New Zealand, and that's a good thing, even though we're well able for both of them. So yeah, all road leads to that game, hopefully.
And Cian, I know you're a stats man, and I spoke with Rich Freeman for the Japan pod, which comes up later next week. And as I said, in the Heineken Cup, no one had lost a game and won it until they did. And now multiple teams are gone unbeaten, and won it until multiple teams went on to do it. And a World Cup no one had ever lost a pool game and gone on to win, and now it has happened, and it could well happen again this time around. And like when there's spoke about the potential shocks earlier, like this rugby, in my opinion, on the field has never been the better place, despite say the odd team like England again are the obvious ones to look at. Wales at times, although they're becoming more expansive by the game. Like it's never been better. Yes, there will be the red card conversations, but we can throw them away because half of that is nonsense. Red cards don't ruin games. Like Ireland to have expectations, which is wonderful as a fan. It's wonderful coming into it, as opposed to the watching out for red flags hitting us in 2019. Like you can't not be excited for this World Cup, I feel like, and I know you're heading over to it. Like it's destined to be an all-time great tournament, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like for once, it's not a wing and a prayer we're heading over on either, or recency bias or anything like it. We've been consistently really good for the last 2 years. I got some stats earlier on I saw Russ Petty had put up last 10 matches for the Six Nations and Rugby Championship teams. Out of the top 5, Scotland had won 7 on an average 28-20. Pretty decent 1-score game margin. Grand. After that, it's New Zealand, France, and South Africa, almost identical, have won either 7 or 8. 33-19, 34-22, 33-21, almost exactly identical. And then Ireland have won 10, average score 28-14. Clean, 2-score difference, and won all of them. No one's talking about Ireland, really. I mean, everyone's talking about...
We're all talking about France, really.
France, South Africa, New Zealand. But they're all, they're all very good, but so much of it is narrative driven. It's so, past World Cups and, home advantage and the romance of having an amazing player in DuPont and all of that. Ireland quietly just going about winning.
Yeah.
Nothing necessarily too flashy or exciting, or yes, we don't have a DuPont and, no, we don't have someone doing cartwheels over the try line. We're not. Oh, actually, there was Earl. Sorry, yeah, he did that. Yeah, show off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do.
And there's the quarterfinal narrative for us in the other direction. Ireland have never won, never gone past the quarterfinal. Sometimes didn't even make the quarterfinals, but never gotten past the quarterfinals. Like, that's just a narrative. That's what's happened up until now. I mean, if you want to talk about it analytically, you take any series of events where even if it's 50-50, if there's a 50-50 chance of getting past a quarterfinal every time you play it, fair enough. If you start chaining those together, what's the odds of 2 quarterfinals in a row at 50-50? You're reducing it down to 25%, and so on and so on and so on and so on. It gets to a stage where it's incredibly unlikely that we'll lose quarterfinals forever, but the narrative would dictate that we would.
Yeah.
So to put this much credence, I mean, it's stories. Stories are what sell things. Stories are what give us the love of the game, to be honest. But you can't put all your credence in them. Stories don't score tries. Stories are what we make up afterwards to explain what we've seen. So maybe the story is a little bit different this time.
And we hope so. And that's kind of the ending I was looking for here. Because that's like I'm growing more optimistic. I'm never, maybe if we get to a final, but until then, I'm not going to come on here and say that Ireland are going to win the World Cup, because I genuinely do not want to jinx myself. I tried as hard as I could not to say Munster win the URC as well, because I did not want to jinx myself. And I probably will do it here. Like someone asked me the other night, who do you think is going to win? I said South Africa. I was saying France for the first 7 or 8 podcasts of the preview series. So it's not going to happen, but I genuinely do feel there's something special about this team. And even if they don't do it, they'll have gone about it the right way, which is something we can't have said. 2015, maybe, because we the nice side the draw that time. And and all that, you know, providing we bet France, we did, but obviously lost to a third of a team. This one just feels different. They're under the radar, but they're world number one. You know, world number one teams, there's been 5 World Cups. They've won 3 of them.
Yep.
The other 2 were won by South Africa. So, or the world number 4 actually as well. So
Yeah.
if you wanted to put a bet on Ireland, South Africa, New Zealand, one of those 3 to win, wouldn't be the most original, but it's certainly pointing that way at the moment. And lads, thank you very, very much. I'd be sure to be talking to you during the World Cup, hopefully in good ways and not, as we said, Namibia, Bordeaux 2007 style conversation. But thanks as always for coming on, and for everyone that listening. If you like what you see or hear, please do subscribe. You'll find the links for the lads' channels, Twitter pages, etc. down below, and for my own. But for now, until next time, take it easy.